Zendaya is in this movie as Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Lupita Nyong'o is widely rumoured to be playing the Greek princess Helen of Troy, which if it turns out to be true would make about as much sense as Papa Asuido playing Severus Snape.
When I saw the news about her casting, I did feel a little bit sorry for her, because similarly to how I view the actor who is playing Black Snape, Papa Asuido.
But after that, it gets pretty bad. Let's face it, when people are overlooking Zendaya playing Athena, you know you're in trouble.
By this point, we've become mostly familiar with the emergence of this newish phenomenon in the pop culture and mainstream discourse, the unleashing of unremitted rage for some cinematic offering or interpretation that appeases those that hold of certain political leanings on the left, and often perpetuated by those perceived as leaning on the right. I don't proclaim to be all that different. I started this channel out of disgust for the crime, the vandalism that was The Rings of Power, as a fan of the original trilogy filmed here in New Zealand, and for my own health I turned to satire. The other motivational tool for this channel being a certain individual who created an intriguing YouTube channel of his own, and that I intend to address very soon, considering my evident enthusiasm and appreciation for the subject matter. As many have coined it, the art of the conservative online pop culture grift. There are many who will argue that there are so many now who will stop at nothing to seek out and destroy anything that might fuel the angst, scratch that itch for the disillusioned and the grumpy, and then launch into a tirade intent on tearing down the woke, the establishment, and to construct of their own supposed echo chamber, predominantly for incel man-children. It would seem evident to me that the stereotype or generalization might now be a tad tired also. But for those who are in direct opposition to their point of view, have you ever considered why they might feel so strongly this way, beyond identity politics and the notion of the grift? Have they legitimate arguments, or do they only deserve the vitriol, the classic and contrived accusations of pushing bigotry, racism, and pseudo-Nazism? Honestly, if theirs or even mine is a grift, although my channel is barely on life support, I obviously do this for fun and to further my editing skills beyond pathetic. It pales when compared to the true and penultimate grift that is Hollywood. There's the considerable outcry about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, and specifically around the casting of Lupita Nyong'o, I will never probably be able to pronounce that right, as Helen of Troy, and I do like the take of Helen of Detroit. I mean, come on, it's funny, lighten up. And Elliot Page as Who Knows, and Zendaya as Athena. And while understandably for those familiar with the Odyssey and the works of Homer, I'm actually not all that familiar. I did take a classics course at high school, but my thing is more with the horse and musket era of history. See this as yet another tokenized set of casting choices with, in this case, fictional works. That said, and even with literal historical figures, this has always been very much a thing for Hollywood.
I don't care what they tell you in school. Cleopatra was black.
As someone who was a cinemaphile, yes, I say that in past tense, in recent times my enthusiasm for the subject has notably waned. It can remove you from that magical immersion when delving into a work with already preconceived expectations. In particular, and with ancient history, where it's unlikely that these casting choices would tick the boxes for the original author. Rather than the box-ticking exercise as Homer approves of the cast, it feels inauthentic and a box-ticking exercise for a lifeless and soulless organization that preaches of anything but diversity and equity and inclusion. That isn't limited to the supposed dog whistles of Lupita, Zendaya, and whoever is the subject of the scrutiny for the day. What of Matt Damon and the entourage of other non-Greek actors? I'm reminded of Three Kingdoms 2010. That series is just plain awesome. Seriously, and with a name such as Christopher Nolan, and an intellectual property such as The Odyssey, why not have a cast of Greek actors and actresses, predominantly of unknown individuals, well-trained, I'm sure there are plenty in Greece, and speaking in ancient Greek with subtitles? Take some bloody risks, rather than the sloppy, Americanized worldview that's constantly pressed with someone else's history or culture. And therein lies the ultimate grift. Hollywood seems intent on providing content, including to coax the attention of those that will also seek to capitalize on the rage generated with pressing a certain message. And it is a confusing message, since there is ample evidence that diverse and unique stories can cinematically and commercially succeed. Still, there might be some justification with not making money, and where the message, whatever that might be, trumps all. Write-offs for tax breaks is absolutely a thing. Perhaps Nolan is hedging his bets here, if things go poorly and he has strayed already too close to the sun. With the interesting armor, the casting, and other aesthetic choices, it is understandable why there are those incensed by what they see as cultural appropriation. And if the shoe were on the other foot,
Then there's John Leguizamo, who has consistently argued that Latinos should play Latino roles.
there is the argument it's also a fictional work. But when has that stopped the drift into historical interpretation? I'm reminded of the floodgates and where two shitty choices don't make a quality one. I'm also not eagerly anticipating the release of a high-budget series from the firing on Fort Sumter to Appomattox Courthouse, starring Lupita Nyong'o as Abraham Lincoln and Elliot Page as Ulysses S. Grant. Of course, and with the South being bad, Robert E. Lee will be played by someone who closely resembles the ghostly version of the Witch King of Angmar.
Don't you think that was terribly clever?
I know, I shouldn't be giving them new and fresh ideas. The one thing rather than outrage that this sort of fear evokes in me is apathy. And no, I did not care much for 2004's Troy. But Hollywood constantly preaches about diversity and about all these stories that involve those they identify as belonging to minority groups. And well, where are they? Rather than regurgitating yet another well-known property with The Little Mermaid or Snow Latte, and yes, I can say that in jest, although, and to be a complete hypocrite, I am quite eager for a casting change-up where Pocahontas shall be portrayed by Danny DeVito. What about a story not yet brought to the silver screen? For example, why not explore African gods or goddesses? If fixated on ancient Greece and goddesses, maybe Andromeda. As a pale, stale male, I'm quite happy to watch something new. I don't care if it doesn't resemble how I walk and talk. Given that it has been joked that I tend to waddle back and forth like a penguin sometimes, that's probably a good thing. I didn't half mind Black Panther. Sure, it was a tad derivative and generic, but the late Chadwick Boseman was charming and likable enough. And again, I knew nothing about Black Panther and his origin story, or anything about the advanced world that was Wakanda. There was, shocking I know, genuine curiosity about the Woman King. While my bullshit radar was on full alert, there were positive elements to take away from that effort, although it did somewhat resemble and possess of the same substance for criticism as 2003's Gods and Generals. I must confess, I half expected to see Gina Prince Bythewood run up to Ronald F. Maxwell and ask him to hold her beer. But again, The Woman King was a bold endeavour to produce something new, and that I hadn't seen before. And therein lies the great Hollywood grift. To preach. And preach some more, just with the practice, yeah, not so much. When considering the grift of a supposed right-wing YouTuber, even if justified, and when wishing to cast them into the abyss, for me, it is my opinion that people are more often distracted by these other individuals on YouTube, rather than the emperor of grifting itself, and that no longer has its clothes. It has the means to weave of a unique and original tale, yet only seek to repurpose and repackage those narratives that are well past their due-by date.